Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand, a podcast for leading financial professionals, or rainmakers, and their teams that offer support for securing a successful future. From marketing help to staffing structure, listen and subscribe for actionable insights from advisors and skilled professionals alike.
Thank you very much, Gina, and thank you all for being here today for Coffee Break with C2P. As Gina mentioned, our topic today, inside the advisor lead flow, decisions, execution, results. A very exciting topic, one to round out our year, one we've had a lot of requests on. So thank you for everyone joining us. Our guest barista today, our insider guru on this, Owen Broadhead. Owen, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Owen is a digital marketing strategist here with C2P with our agency. He specializes in driving lead generation and elevating social media performance through thoughtful, results-driven campaigns. At our agency, Owen plays a key role in supporting advisors with innovative marketing initiatives that align with their business goals. So, Owen, glad to have your expertise on this topic with us as we have our final coffee break of the year. We thought this would be a great one to finish off the year because we've had a lot of questions on this as we talk about lead generation, lead flow. This came up at the retreat, the C2P team retreat that we had in Park City during the business development portion, because we talked about a lot of the offices that have been able to generate a lot of leads, but then said, as they're coming in, what do we do next? And what should that system look like? So as we kind of tee that up, probably the best place to start is from your experience, what should a clean, intentional lead flow look like from the first click to the first conversation?
That's a great question, Matt. So first thing I always like to think about is the prospect's intent. Why did that lead actually raise their hand in the first place? So you have to define the clear objective of the campaign. So a guide campaign would be about educating that prospect. A webinar would be, the objective there would be get attendance and show rate. And a consultation is simply about a conversation. But from there, the click path should be pretty short and obvious. It should be a click led to a simple landing page. When I mean simple, I mean a high converting page that really just gives the prospect exactly clearly what they asked for. And then there should be a form and then a confirmation. And the prospect should immediately get what they asked for right after they submitted their information. So if it's a guide, they should get that guide instantly. If it's a webinar, they should get all of those details about the webinar and what's coming next, and that they're going to hear from you. And after that, the goal is just a human follow-up and not too salesy. Ultimately, the purpose of the flow is to arrive at the conversation with context, not to nurture that lead forever. So the takeaway would be fewer steps, clearer intent, and more human connection.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it is very easy to get caught up into what makes sense on our end, either as marketers or advisors, of what makes sense, but it's got to make sense to the user. So putting yourself in their shoes. So the advice that I would give too is, map that out, draw out what that process looks like on your side. For any of you working with our agency, or even if you're not, you want to reach out to us, to myself, to Owen for our agency team. We map a lot of these out because there's obviously different types of lead generation. Some of you might run webinars or workshops or Meta or Facebook campaigns. Those might look different. We have process maps of what that looks like. So, hey, they see an ad, they should get this email, they should get this phone call. But map that out, because that's an easy way to make sure that you don't miss any steps in that plan. And you can do that all the way from, hey, first time they see an ad to the first appointment. Or if you really want to be diligent, you can go the first time they see that ad all the way to they become a client. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but I do want to give a shout out. I see Charlie on here. Charlie, we had that call, I think, a couple months ago, and we hopped back on, and you had mapped out, I think, the entire process, even like, different arches in that for an entire process map all the way to someone becoming a client. So that was awesome to see how you had mapped that whole thing out. So I would highly encourage all of you to kind of draw that out, looking at it through the eyes of the prospect or the client, not necessarily how you envision that on that side. So, Owen, I guess then going back to that, how important we say that all the time on our team. And I think we've said that in here before when Carrie's been on one of these coffee breaks. Speed to lead, speed to lead. How important is speed to lead in an advisory practice, and what practical systems can advisors put in place to respond faster without adding stress? That's the key. Without adding stress.
Right. Yeah, I would say that speed to lead is pretty critical because interest decays pretty fast after someone, submits that form. They want that guide or they want that email immediately. So right after that download or webinar registration, they should be getting that automated information. So that kind of helps, reduce pressure there because that in that sense it's automated. But also you want to be responding during business hours and not, at a wrong time. So those automations, sometimes if they're improperly set up, you can't just rely on those. So having a short, script ready to, maybe make 5 phone calls in an afternoon or when you wake up, and, not all of them are going to need to be reached out immediately. That's why, we can help sort of gauge their email activity based on, how they've interacted with open rates and clicks and replies. And we'll give you an insight into that. But really, ultimately, once those leads kind of land in your lap, take a close look at them and be ready to give a nice, call or voicemail if they're not ready, and try to avoid things like, hey, you got our guide, thanks for the guide. This is where Matt, you've talked about giving that opportunity to storytell, so you've got this lead, they're active, and now you can really make an impression on them. They've seen your landing page, they're tying connections between your brand, and now it's time to really make that personal connection. So I think that the automation helps with, with burnout, but at the end, I think you could really maximize, not having pressure with these things if you have something ready and you're comfortable with it and you have your story in there. And then that sort of leaves it open to the lead for the next touch point and to have a more, holistic connection with you as the advisor. So fast, predictable responses build trust without burning advisors out.
Yeah, and Owen, you mentioned something in your response there I think is important too, is speed to lead too doesn't mean that you still can't do triaging within that. I would encourage everyone to prioritize your follow-up. So using questions, and I know we're going to get into that in some of our questions on here, but using questions within your forms or your questionnaires, depending on what type of lead generation you're doing. But asking whatever type of lead gen you're doing, questions of what asset levels they're at, or if you're targeting a certain demographic. But when you can start to segment those out, you might want to call the higher asset levels first, or those if you're targeting federal employees, if those that have identified they have a certain type of asset, you might want to call those first, or those that say they have a certain level of urgency to their retirement planning, following with those up first. And there's services that can help append the data too. Some of you have heard of services like Catchlight. There is an additional cost to services like that, but those can help append that data that can help you triage and prioritize that follow-up. So you still want to have that expediency to that follow-up, but it can help prioritize which ones you are calling or emailing first, in addition to that automation that Owen's mentioning. So, Owen, similar to that, what role does the branding consistency play with that? So, like the simple landing pages, the clear messages, the messaging play in improving trust and engagement. You mentioned that trust earlier, and we know how important that is in this industry, particular the know, like, trust element in working with an advisor. So, how much does the branding element play in throughout the whole process of the lead flow?
Yeah, I would say, one of the most important things in building trust is consistency, and that's across the entire journey. So, believe it or not, most prospects actually decide if they trust you before they even speak to you. Consistency across your ads, the guides, landing pages, webinars, emails, it creates a legitimacy. And the simple landing pages, they're niche, they're for one thing, and that gives them the opportunity to say, is this for me? Do I trust this? Okay, what do I do next? And so this is, especially important for these guide campaigns because the title, the promise, and the follow-up, and they match exactly. So, all that niche content is there and the lead already had engaged with it. So from there, being clear, having a professional presentation, reduce friction and skepticism. So clarity and consistency do more selling than clever copy. And a big thing also is checking on your Google reviews. Those actually have a big impact on how Google and AI are evaluating the trustworthiness of your site and your services.
Yeah, because you've mentioned that to me too, right? With not to get too technical here, but we know with a lot of us have heard of SEO and the implications of that, but now with AI becoming more and more important, it's called AEO, and with AI, reviews and testimonials, things like that are becoming more and more important. So, can you speak just a little bit to that of why it's important for advisors to be focusing on that as part of their marketing mix to help build trust?
Sure. I mean, if you think about all of your best clients or prospects, they have probably had questions for you that are similar. So take note of those questions that they are asking and let us know or put them on your website and answer them very clearly, answer them, in very clear English. And that way, because, the internet is for answers. So if someone is asking that question, it's going to crawl it and it's going to find the line of best fit and it's going to go straight to your page given that you've done everything right in consistency. But yeah, it's important to be putting those questions and answering them in very clear English to bring people organically to your site because a lot of your best leads are going to be organic because they're already out there searching for you. We're not hitting them with ads.
Yeah, and the last thing, if you could touch on real quick too, because you mentioned that consistency, and I've heard this from you in other meetings that the tie between digitally, especially because when people are looking all of you up as advisors, but between the Google business profile, your social media, and your website, like those are the three places, especially people are looking first to find out about you as an advisor.
And if you're putting all, very similar optimized content across those different channels, that sort of builds this like ocean of search engine marketing. And if you're all on the same topic, that wave on that same topic is going to have a much bigger, crest fall into, getting in front of your leads. So optimizing your content on your Google business page should align with your website, should align with your paid media campaign. If they're all going on at one time, it's going to have a much stronger impact.
Fantastic, thank you. So now, how should advisors be thinking about the follow-up cadence and messaging? So now that we've interacted with that prospect, how should the follow-up and cadence and messaging work so it feels professional and helpful and educational, not aggressive and generic?
Yeah, again, this one I'd probably tie it back to the objective of the campaign because it'll be a little bit different. So a follow-up should feel more like a service rather than, chasing someone. And the cadence should match, the action of the objective. So a guide might have a lighter educational touch point, a series of touch points, whereas a webinar should have, reminders, logistics, what to expect and if you're just going for a conversation, a consult request, that should just be fast, direct, and outreach. Um, but the most effective messages should reference something specific, like what they just downloaded or what the webinar is. So I would avoid having one clear reason for reaching out and avoid language like just checking in. And over time, sort of spacing out your communication based on their interaction. And I think that, as long as the content and the messaging that you're hitting them with is consistent and, it's relevant to what they interacted with you in the first place, I think it's going to beat, continuous repetition every single time.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier, and we've had this conversation with our team too in the content development. I think what a lot of us can be doing better, starting with this follow-up content, and this can be built into the automation earlier on in a process, is telling stories. Um, I think it's natural to someone downloads a guide or attends a webinar to say, we have services that address this, or book a call and let's start talking about this problem. But it's okay. Like think about what is going to engage them. People get engaged in stories, especially a story that isn't finished. You hear a song that the lyrics get cut off, your brain naturally finishes that lyric. If you start sending emails and the story is unresolved and it's, hey, we're going to finish the story here, or start to tee up, you probably have heard a story like this and you start to tell it and then say, we hear that story all the time. That's what we discuss with our clients in this next meeting. You've started to tee that up. So instead of just saying, these are the services we provide, come in and talk about it, start to tell stories in your emails versus using it as a feature and benefit listing. And those are the kind of things that we love to talk about as marketers on our end as that team. Um, but it's also one of those things like we did talked about the retreat for those that are there. Use AI as a thought partner these days. Hey, how can I use stories more in my marketing? How can I use it more in that? So, and I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that, on how we can start to pull these stories out more and use them more versus just the features and benefits.
Yeah, I think that storytelling and original content ideas that come straight from advisors are some of the best content launching pads that we start with as an agency. And we hear these ideas and we welcome them and start to craft things, but that doesn't always mean that we have to do it for you. You could really just kind of say, okay, I like this. I know how to do this. And create a little passion project for yourself. And yeah, if you want to use AI as a partner, you can go back and forth with it, and you can also kind of use the lead activity and their behavior to help base your understanding of how often that you should maybe be paying attention to this journey, and when the right time is to maybe swoop in for that call or that email, or hey, we noticed that you've opened a few emails. We've got a couple openings for consultations, free consultations. Book a call. You get a copy of the free bucket plan book after. um, I think it gives opportunity for you to speak about the bucket plan too, and how that has changed other people's lives. It doesn't have to be your personal story. You can maybe tell a
Mm.
story of someone else. Say, yeah, I helped someone do this, and that's why I'm here. That's why I do this.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Storytelling, are you talking about it in your social media, or are you talking about after you've done an event and the client's getting in touch with you, or is it just through an email? How are you suggesting we do this?
I, Carol, yeah, I would recommend using it as much as you can, honestly, and weaving it in throughout. I've had a couple advisors we've spoken with recently that have talked about, and we're deviating a little from the lead flow process, but it does relate to that. That have said, "Hey, I'm giving the taxes and retirement presentation." So a lot of you might be using our tax and retirement presentation. It's on C2P Central, and hey, the facts in there are fantastic. I'm going and using this, but it's not engaging the audience. They're just jotting notes down. But what if you gave that same presentation, but at the beginning, you lead with, again, a lot of you were at the retreat. For those that won't, I'll tee it up. At the beginning, our MC asked everyone to write down, hey, write down one client that you helped this year that was especially impactful or meaningful to you. Write down the story of what happened with that client. Now imagine you kick off that workshop now telling that story to the audience of why that was an impactful moment of helping that client, of however you help them set up their future because of the challenge they were going through or how it helped their legacy for their family. And now you tell that audience, like, hey, as we go through today's presentation, I'm going to present a lot of facts or a lot of things that have changed in tax code or regulation, especially around the OB3. But I want you to think of your story and how this relates to you. And then afterwards, we're going to address those in your 20-minute consultation. So you've told a story, and now you have them thinking about their story during the workshop. You've also presented a little bit of an assumptive close saying you're going to talk about their situation during their 20-minute consultation. So you've kind of combined a few different strategies in one there, but the reason that works is because of the storytelling. People are drawn in by the story. But yes, it was a good question, because I think if we can take some of those stories too that clients send you, using those on your website, again, fine line too between story and testimonial too. Want to run those by compliance every time to make sure we're okay with that as well. But yes, excellent question. Owen, these were great questions, but hopping back in for you, how do lead flow and follow-up processes need to adapt for different campaign types like webinars, live events, or seminars compared to standard digital lead generation?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, especially as, webinars, we still see, the demand for them, but attendance rate go down, but we know that it's a great way to get in front of your prospects to get that initial call booked. So for webinars, I said it earlier, attendance first, that is the objective. So they're going to require more reminders, clear expectations, stronger confirmation. They're also, going to want to know, what am I going to get out of this? How long is it going to be? If it's an in-person event, they want the details. It should be very clear for them to pull that up and share it with a spouse or friend or partner. But it's going to be different based on your campaign. So if a guide, if that objective for a guide, you just are delivering value immediately, and you sort of let that curiosity develop over time. We see this, and as the next of the automation emails go out for the guide, we'll see more of them start to open. Sometimes they click, sometimes they reply. It's a good opportunity for you to just kind of observe the activity of that lead. But going even the next step further is, if you do get, when you do get people to attend your webinar, the post-event segmentation is really important. So you want to have, conditional communication that is automated based on whether they attended that webinar or whether they did not. Here's what you missed. Download this, or we have another one coming up. Get them into your nurture. And then for the ones who did show up, thanks for attending. Schedule a call with us. We, get them into a completely different funnel, but those funnels, they should really have an alignment to them. And, based on the topic of the guide, they got to go into a completely different nurture. Because if you get send a guide for taxes and retirement, and then they end up in a Social Security campaign, they're going to say, this is not what I signed up for. Your trusts maybe start to go down a little bit. That's not for everyone. That some prospects have different moments in life where they need to focus on different things. But in general, if they came into your funnel for a certain topic, you should really be catering that content to their original touch point. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Different campaigns are going to have different follow-up rhythms, and consistency for automation is great, but more personalization comes from that human interaction.
Yeah, thank you, Owen. And we know the more touch points, the better. Sometimes it takes seeing a message several times for it to hit, and the statistic changes all the times, but like the number of touch points until a sale is made used to be 7. I've heard 13. That's always jumping. That's why the more that you can improve the number of especially in-person touch points. I know a lot of you do this, because I've heard from several advisor network that run like a FIAs or other similar type SOFA, other type of programs where you run a back-to-back night, or at least twice in a week, where you invite people that are there on a Tuesday and invite them back the next day. Like you'll run a Social Security, taxes, and retirement back to back and invite them back the next day, so you can see them twice in a week. We'll do something similar, JL Smith, where Joe, who was again at the retreat, referring back to that, but he will do pro feds. And when he's there working with federal employees, he will hand out the tickets and say, hey, why don't you join us for our AFIA workshop next week? And now we have them again in person at a different event on a totally different topic a week later. So it just gives you that's a nice way to overlap some of your different marketing and business development strategies as well. So kind of to Owen's point, just giving you more touch points on that side. So Owen, I know with some of these we've kind of skipped around, so I'm going to skip to one of ours here. If an advisor wanted to improve results without adding more campaigns or spend, everyone wants to do that, right? Improve results without adding spend. What lead flow fundamentals should they focus on fixing first?
Yep, this is a good last question because I feel like it really sums up a lot of the conversation here. So start with the basics, speed to lead, follow up consistently. Consistency, as we said, is a major through line here. Reduce friction, increase clarity, and respond consistently. And segment your messaging based on their behavior. Also, take a look at your organic and local visibility online. Check your Google accuracy for everything is up to date. Be asking those questions on your website. And some of, like I said, the highest quality leads are going to be those that are already searching for you. And if they are searching for you and we're running a paid campaign for you, we'll also be targeting them as well there by nature. So essentially, fix your automated system and your follow-up routine before, considering adding more volume or technology. Get the basics. And I think that's the common through line is just reducing friction, increasing clarity and consistency.
Thank you very much, Owen. And yeah, I mean, so much of this, like you said, is make sure you got the process nailed down. We talk about that a lot. Before you go out and spend the money on lead generation, we highly encourage you to get the processes nailed down. We are here to help with that. With the process, sometimes comes the technology. Owen has led the charge for us on getting some new marketing technologies nailed down. So, Owen, thank you very, very much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Never miss an episode by subscribing now to discover new resources and strategies. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help scale and secure your business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.